They threw me into a violent thunderstorm while I was 8 months pregnant, and I hit the pavement so hard I thought I'd lose my baby. As I lay there bleeding in the rain, begging them to stop, but they had no idea what was coming for them. I'm Regina Davis, and this is the true story of how I went from being thrown out like trash to becoming the woman who destroyed the Merino dynasty with the stroke of a pen. Stay until the very end, because the moment they walked into that boardroom and saw me sitting in the CEO chair, their faces went viral and ended them forever. You don't want to miss what happened when they realized I owned every single debt keeping them alive. Hit that subscribe and like button right now, because this revenge was calculated down to the last dollar. Let me take you back to where it all started. 24 hours earlier, I was sitting in the Merino mansion's smallest guest room, rubbing my swollen belly and trying not to cry. The pain in my back was excruciating, but nothing compared to the emptiness I felt watching Anthony walk past my door without even glancing in. My husband of 2 years hadn't touched me in months, not once since I started showing. The staff whispered when they thought I couldn't hear, pitying looks following me through halls I'd once believed would be my home. I kept telling myself he was just stressed about work, that his family just needed time to accept me. I was so naive. My phone buzzed. It was an unknown number, a lawyer's office. I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. But something made me open it. Urgent. Regarding the estate of Eleanor Harrington. My grandmother's name. The grandmother I'd never met, who'd been estranged from my mother for 30 years. The email was formal, cold, asking me to call immediately about inheritance matters. I stared at it, confused, my heart pounding for reasons I didn't understand yet. Before I could process it, I heard voices downstairs. Anthony's voice, his brother's laugh, then his mother's sharp tone cutting through the air like a blade. She's been lying about that baby for months. We have proof now. My blood turned to ice. I pressed my hand against my belly instinctively, protective, terrified. What proof? What were they talking about? The floor beneath me felt like it was crumbling. I wanted to hide, to disappear, but I knew they were coming for me. That's when the door slammed open, so hard it rattled the walls. Anthony's mother, Catherine, stood in the doorway with a look that could freeze hell itself. Behind her was Anthony, his jaw set and eyes dead. His brother Marcus smirked, phone already raised, recording. And behind them all was Anthony's father, Richard, the man who'd looked at me like dirt from the day we met. They surrounded me like I was prey. I was 8 months pregnant, exhausted, and completely alone. Catherine didn't waste time. You've embarrassed this family long enough, she said, venom dripping from every word. Marcus stepped forward, still filming, and said, "That baby isn't even his. We had someone run a DNA test." My mind went blank. What DNA test? When? How? But before I could speak, Richard threw an envelope at my feet. "Pick it up," he ordered. Inside were divorce papers, already filled out, just waiting for my signature. "Sign it now," Catherine said, leaning close, "or we'll make sure everyone knows you tried to trap our son with another man's baby." I looked at Anthony, desperate, searching for any sign of the man I'd fallen in love with. Nothing. Just cold, empty staring. "Anthony, please," I whispered. "Tell them the truth." He turned away. Marcus laughed. "This is going to get millions of views," he said, zooming in on my tears. My hands shook as I held the papers. I didn't sign. Not yet. "Get out," I said, my voice cracking. "Get out of my room." Richard's face turned red with rage. "This is our house," he growled. "You get out." That's when everything went dark. Catherine insisted I come downstairs to collect my things immediately. She said if I didn't, they'd call the police and have me arrested for trespassing. I had nowhere to go. No family. No money. No friends in the city. Anthony had made sure of that, slowly cutting me off from everyone over the past 2 years. So I followed them down the grand staircase, clutching the envelope from the lawyer's office in one hand and my belly with the other, praying this nightmare would end. But when we reached the main hall, I knew it was just beginning. The entire Marino family was waiting. Catherine stood at the center, like a queen holding court. Marcus had his phone up, still recording, grinning like this was entertainment. Richard's face was stone. And Anthony stood next to a woman I'd never seen before, beautiful, poised, smiling at me like she'd already won. "Before you leave," Catherine announced, her voice echoing through the marble hall, "you will apologize for wasting our time and ruining our son's reputation." I just stood there, frozen, one hand on my belly where my baby was kicking frantically, as if she could sense my terror. "I said apologize," Catherine repeated. I shook my head. I don't know where I found the courage, but I whispered, "No, I have nothing to apologize for." Richard's eyes flashed with rage. He nodded to two security guards I'd never seen before. Big men. Cold faces. They moved toward me, and I backed up, stumbling. "Please," I said, my voice breaking. "Please, I'm pregnant. Don't hurt my baby." They didn't care. They grabbed my arms, their grips like iron, and started dragging me toward the front doors. The pain was immediate and sharp, radiating through my belly. I screamed. I begged. I cried out for Anthony, but he just stood there watching with those dead, empty eyes while that woman wrapped her arm around him. Marcus followed us with his phone, laughing so hard he could barely keep it steady. "This is cinema," he said.
Absolute cinema.
Catherine walked beside them, her heels clicking on the marble floor. "This is where garbage belongs," she said calmly, like she was discussing the weather. When they reached the massive front doors, I saw it. The storm. Lightning split the sky. Rain poured down in sheets, so thick you couldn't see past the driveway. Thunder shook the ground. The temperature had dropped violently, the kind of cold that kills. They opened those doors and freezing wind slammed into me like a fist. "Wait," I gasped. "Please, just let me get my coat, my phone." But Richard just nodded. The guards shoved me. Hard. I flew through the air and hit the stone steps. My shoulder took the impact first, then my hip. Pain exploded through my entire body. I tried to curl up, to protect my belly, but I kept tumbling down until I hit the pavement. The rain soaked through my thin dress instantly. My bag came flying after me, clothes and papers scattering across the wet ground. From the doorway, Catherine's voice cut through the storm. "Don't ever come back, or we'll have you arrested." Then the door slammed shut with a boom that echoed in the empty street. I lay there on the cold, wet pavement, rain mixing with my tears, my whole body shaking. I pressed both hands to my belly, feeling my baby moving frantically inside me. "I'm sorry," I whispered to her. "I'm so sorry." I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't work. Everything hurt. I could feel something warm and wet between my legs that wasn't rain, blood. I was bleeding. Panic gripped me. My baby. Something was wrong with my baby. I crawled across the pavement, gathering what I could from my scattered belongings, but my hands were so cold I could barely grip anything. The lawyer's envelope. I grabbed it, clutching it to my chest like it was the only thing that mattered. Then I just sat there in the storm, too broken to move, too terrified to think. I wanted to die. I really did. But my baby kicked again, weakly, and I knew I had to survive for her. I don't know how long I was out there. Minutes? Hours? My body was shutting down. I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. My vision was starting to blur. I managed to crawl under a streetlight, thinking maybe someone would see me, but the streets were empty. Everyone was smart enough to stay inside during a storm like this. I closed my eyes, ready to just let it all end. That's when I heard them, car engines. I forced my eyes open and saw 3 black cars pulling up, sleek and expensive, their headlights cutting through the rain. An elderly man in an immaculate suit stepped out, holding an umbrella. Miss Regina Davis, he said, his voice urgent. Thank God we found you. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I just stared at him as he gestured frantically to others. People rushed toward me, medical professionals in warm coats, carrying equipment. They wrapped heated blankets around me, checked my vitals, spoke in calm, professional voices that felt like they were coming from another world. We need to get her to the hospital immediately, one of them said. She's hypothermic and bleeding. The baby's in distress. They lifted me gently into one of the cars, and I felt warmth for the first time in what felt like years. A woman held my hand, telling me to stay awake, to keep talking, that help was coming. But all I could think about was the envelope still clutched in my frozen fingers. When I woke up, I was in a hospital room. Not the basic clinic where I'd gone for prenatal checkups. This was something else entirely. Private. Luxurious. The kind of place I'd only seen in movies. Soft lighting. Real art on the walls. A massive window overlooking the city. My baby. Panic surged through me. She's safe, a gentle voice said. The elderly man from the street was sitting beside my bed. Your daughter is being monitored in our neonatal unit. She's stable, but it was very close. 10 more minutes out there would have killed you both. Tears streamed down my face. My baby girl. She was alive. Who are you? I whispered. He straightened his tie, his expression grave but kind. My name is Mr. Harrison, he said. I'm your grandmother's attorney, and we need to talk immediately about why I've been trying to reach you for the past 24 hours. What he told me next shattered everything I thought I knew about my life and rebuilt it into something I never could have imagined. My grandmother was Eleanor Harrington. Not just any Eleanor Harrington. The Eleanor Harrington. The woman who'd built Harrington Global Empire from nothing, who owned buildings in 30 countries, whose name was whispered in boardrooms across the world with equal parts fear and respect. The grandmother I'd never met because my mother had run away from the family 30 years ago after some dispute I'd never fully understood. My mother had changed our names, hidden us, died 5 years ago without ever reconciling with her own mother. But Eleanor Harrington had never stopped looking for us. She'd spent decades and millions of dollars trying to find her daughter and granddaughter. She'd found us 8 months ago, Mr. Harrison explained. She'd been watching from a distance, seeing everything the Marino family did to me, waiting for the right moment to reveal herself. She'd wanted to wait until after my baby was born, to make sure I was safe and ready. Then, 1 week ago, she had a massive stroke and died within hours. But before she died, she'd made arrangements. She'd left everything to me, her entire empire, all $1.02 billion. Mr. Harrison handed me a letter, the paper thick and expensive, the handwriting elegant but shaky. Through my tears, I read, My dearest Regina, I failed your mother by being too proud to forgive, too stubborn to bend. I won't fail you the same way. Take this empire I built and show them what Harrington blood truly means. Never bow to anyone ever again. Make them remember your name. With all my love, Eleanor. I looked up at Mr. Harrison, my mind reeling. This is real. I whispered. He nodded. As of 72 hours ago, you became the sole owner and chairwoman of Harrington Global. You control everything now. Then he laid out the details, and with each word, I felt something cold and sharp crystallizing inside me. The DNA tests the Marinos showed me completely fabricated. They'd paid a doctor $50,000 to create fake results. Anthony's marriage to me. It started as a bet with his college friends. There was video evidence. They'd recorded him accepting $100,000 to marry the poorest girl on campus and see how long he could stand it. The Marino family business, drowning in debt. They owed over $140 million to various creditors and were months away from bankruptcy. Here's where it got interesting. Richard Marino had recently applied for a major development contract with Harrington Global, my company now. Catherine's boutique investments were in properties I now owned. The Marino family's entire financial survival was hanging by a thread I now controlled. And they had absolutely no idea. I looked at Mr. Harrison, and I felt something inside me shift. The scared, broken girl who'd begged for love in the rain was gone. Someone else was sitting in this hospital bed now. Someone harder, colder, more dangerous. "Tell me everything," I said, my voice steady for the first time in years. "Every business dealing, every debt, every connection. I want to know exactly how to destroy them." But let me take you back. 24 hours before that storm, before everything fell apart, I was still trying to be the perfect Marino wife. I woke up that morning in the smallest guest room at the back of the mansion, the room they'd given me when my pregnancy started showing. Anthony had moved into the master suite alone, saying my condition made it hard for him to sleep. I told myself it was temporary, that once the baby came, things would go back to normal. I was so wrong. Breakfast was the worst part of every day. Catherine would sit at the head of the table, her eyes scanning me like I was an insect she'd found in her soup. "You're wearing that?" she'd say, gesturing at my loose maternity dress. "The Marinos have a reputation to uphold, Regina. Try to look presentable." I'd apologize, promise to do better, even though every piece of clothing in my closet was a hand-me-down from their housekeeper. Anthony would sit across from me, scrolling through his phone, pretending I didn't exist. His brother Marcus would smirk and make comments. "Getting bigger every day, aren't you? Hope that kid's actually Anthony's." He'd laugh like it was a joke, but his eyes were cold, calculating. Anthony never defended me. Not once. That afternoon, I was walking past the study when I heard voices. Anthony's voice. Marcus's laugh. I should have kept walking, but something made me stop. "You're really going through with it?" Marcus said. "At Mom's memorial service next week," Anthony replied. "I'll announce that Regina isn't mentally stable, that she needs help, that I've been trying to protect the family from her erratic behavior." My hand flew to my belly, protective, terrified. "They'll eat it up," Marcus said. "Everyone already thinks she's weird. This just confirms it." They laughed together. My husband, his brother, planning my public humiliation like it was entertainment. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. A storm was coming. I pressed my back against the wall, my baby kicking frantically inside me, and realized something terrible. I was completely alone in this house, and they were never going to accept me. But I had to try. For my baby, I had to keep trying. I didn't know then that in less than 24 hours, trying wouldn't matter anymore. The next morning, everything got worse. I was in the kitchen making tea when Catherine walked in with two of her friends, wealthy women who looked at me like I was part of the furniture. They didn't even lower their voices. "I heard the baby might not even be Anthony's," one of them whispered loudly. Catherine sighed dramatically. "We're having it tested, of course." Discreetly. "But the timeline is questionable." My cup shattered on the floor. They all turned to look at me, their faces a mixture of pity and disgust. "Clean that up," Catherine said coldly. "And try not to embarrass yourself further." My hands shook as I picked up the broken pieces. What timeline? What test? I'd never been with anyone but Anthony. This was insane. But when I tried to find Anthony to defend myself, he was gone. His car wasn't in the driveway. His phone went straight to voicemail. He started disappearing for hours, sometimes entire days, never explaining where he'd been. When he was home, he'd walk past me like I was invisible. "Anthony, please," I begged one night, catching him in the hallway. "Please just talk to me. What's happening?" He looked at me with such cold contempt it took my breath away. "You're suffocating me, Regina. This whole situation," he gestured at my belly, "was never supposed to be permanent." Then he walked away, leaving me standing there alone. The abuse escalated after that. Catherine started making me serve at their dinner parties, carrying trays, refilling glasses, cleaning up while their guests watched with uncomfortable expressions. "Make yourself useful," she'd snap. "God knows you're dead, wait otherwise." Marcus would film me sometimes, laughing when I dropped things or stumbled. "This is content gold," he'd say. I started having nightmares. Waking up in that tiny back room, clutching my belly, realizing with horrible clarity that this family had never intended to accept me. I was a temporary inconvenience. A mistake Anthony had made that they were now trying to erase. But I couldn't give up. My baby needed a father, a family, stability. So I kept trying, kept apologizing, kept hoping that somehow, if I was just good enough, patient enough, they'd finally see me as one of them. I didn't realize that by the next day, none of it would matter. They were about to throw me away completely. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in my room, rubbing my swollen ankles, when one of the housekeepers knocked softly. "Miss Regina? This came for you. Certified mail." She handed me a thick cream-colored envelope with embossed lettering, "Harrison and Associates, Attorneys at Law." My hands trembled as I opened it. At first, I thought it was a scam. Some cruel joke. The words didn't make sense. "Dear Miss Regina Davis, we regret to inform you of the passing of Eleanor Harrington, your maternal grandmother. As per her last will and testament, you have been named the sole heir and beneficiary of her estate, including all controlling shares of Harrington Global Holdings, valued at $1.02 billion. I read it 3 times. 4 times. The letters blurred as tears filled my eyes. My grandmother. The woman my mother had run from 30 years ago. The woman I'd never met, never known, had left me everything. Buildings. Companies. Properties across continents. An empire. I pressed my hand to my mouth, trying not to sob. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like me. But the letterhead was real. The lawyer's signature was real. The list of assets, page after page after page, was real. I wasn't powerless anymore. I wasn't trapped. I had options. For the first time in months, I felt something other than fear. I felt hope. "What's that?" I jumped. Catherine was standing in my doorway, her eyes fixed on the papers in my lap. Behind her stood Anthony and Marcus, their expressions suspicious. "Nothing," I said quickly, my heart racing. I tried to fold the letter, but my hands were shaking too badly. "It doesn't look like nothing," Marcus said, stepping closer. "Fancy letterhead. Is someone suing you?" "Let me see that," Catherine demanded, reaching for it. "No." I clutched the envelope to my chest, panic flooding through me. Some instinct deep inside screamed at me to hide this, to protect it, to keep it secret. "It's just junk mail," I lied, my voice cracking. "Some solicitation. Estate planning services." Catherine's eyes narrowed. She didn't believe me, but after a long, tense moment, she stepped back. "Fine," she said coldly. "Pack your things. You're leaving tomorrow." My blood turned to ice. "What?" "You heard me," Catherine said. "This family has tolerated you long enough." The storm outside had finally arrived. They didn't wait until tomorrow. Within an hour, the entire Marino family had assembled in the grand foyer. Catherine stood at the center like a prosecutor. Richard's face was stone. Marcus had his phone out, already recording. And Anthony, my husband, the man I'd loved, stood with his arms crossed, staring at me like I was a stranger. Behind him was a woman I'd never seen before. Beautiful, elegant, her hand resting possessively on Anthony's arm. She smiled at me. It was the cruelest smile I'd ever seen. "You've been lying to us from the beginning," Catherine announced, her voice echoing off the marble floors. "Manipulating our son. Trying to trap him with a baby that probably isn't even his." "That's not true," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I've never lied. I've only ever tried to." You've tried to destroy this family's reputation, Richard cut in. We won't tolerate it anymore. Anthony, please, I begged, turning to him desperately. Tell them the truth. He looked at me with dead eyes. I don't know what the truth is anymore, Regina. Marcus laughed, zooming in with his phone. This is going viral for sure. Please, I sobbed, clutching my belly as my baby kicked frantically.
Please don't do this.
I have nowhere to go. I'm 8 months pregnant. Just let me stay until. Get her out, Catherine said coldly. 2 security guards appeared from the shadows. Big men I'd never seen before. They grabbed my arms and I screamed.
No, please.
My baby. They dragged me toward the front doors. I struggled, begging, crying, but their grips were iron. Outside, the storm raged, lightning splitting the sky, rain coming down in violent sheets, thunder shaking the ground. Wait, I screamed. My phone. My coat. Please. But Richard just nodded, and they threw the doors open. Freezing wind slammed into me. Rain hit my face like needles. I could barely see through the downpour. This is where trash belongs, Catherine said from the doorway. Then they shoved me. Hard. I flew through the air and crashed onto the stone steps. Pain exploded through my shoulder, my hip, my back. I tumbled down, unable to stop myself, until I hit the pavement at the bottom. My hands scraped against wet concrete. Something warm spread between my legs, blood. My baby, I gasped, pressing both hands to my belly. Please, God, my baby. My bag came flying after me, clothes and papers scattering across the rain-soaked ground. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating their faces in the doorway. Marcus was still filming, laughing. The strange woman was wrapped around Anthony, looking satisfied. Catherine's expression was pure disgust. I crawled toward the stairs, reaching up desperately. Anthony,
Please.
don't do this. He stepped forward, and for one desperate moment, I thought he'd changed his mind, that he'd help me. Instead, he looked down at me with complete contempt. You're not my wife anymore, he said, his voice flat and emotionless. And that baby is not my responsibility. Then the massive doors slammed shut with a boom that echoed through the storm. I collapsed on the pavement, alone, bleeding, 8 months pregnant in a violent thunderstorm. And that's where I would have died, if they hadn't found me. I don't know how long I lay there in the rain. Time stopped meaning anything. My body was shutting down, the cold seeping into my bones. My baby had stopped kicking, and that terrified me more than anything else. I was dying. We were both dying. That's when I heard the engines. Through the rain, I saw headlights, 3 black cars, sleek and expensive, pulling up to the curb. Doors opened. An elderly man in an immaculate suit stepped out, holding an umbrella. Miss Regina Davis, he said urgently, rushing toward me. Thank God we found you. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. I just stared at him through the rain as more people emerged, medical professionals in warm coats, carrying equipment, their faces focused and professional. We need to move her now, a woman said, kneeling beside me. She's hypothermic. The baby's in distress. They wrapped heated blankets around me, lifted me gently into one of the cars. Someone held my hand, telling me to stay awake, that I was safe now. But I couldn't process any of it. My mind was blank, my body numb. When I woke up, I was in a hospital room that looked nothing like any hospital I'd ever seen. Private. Luxurious. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Soft lighting. Real art on the walls. My baby. I gasped, panic surging through me. She's safe, the elderly man said from beside my bed. Stable and monitored. But it was very close, Miss Davis. 10 more minutes would have killed you both. Tears streamed down my face. Who are you? My name is Mr. Harrison, he said gently. I'm your grandmother's attorney. And I have a great deal to tell you. Over the next hour, he laid out everything. My grandmother's empire, the inheritance, the companies, properties, investments, all of it now mine. He showed me documents, videos of my grandmother speaking directly to me, family photographs I'd never seen. You are Regina Harrington Davis, he said, chairwoman of Harrington Global Holdings. As of 72 hours ago, you control a $1.02 billion empire. I stared at the papers in my shaking hands. This was real. All of it was real. Mr. Harrison leaned forward, his expression serious. There's something else you should know. We've been monitoring your situation with the Marino family. Their business is failing. They owe approximately $140 million to various creditors. He paused, letting that sink in. Half of that debt, $70 million, is currently held by subsidiaries of companies you now own. My breath caught. What does that mean? I whispered. Mr. Harrison's eyes gleamed. It means, Miss Davis, that you hold the Marino family's financial future in your hands. You can call in that debt whenever you choose. You can buy out the rest. You can control their entire empire. Something cold and sharp crystallized inside me. The scared, broken girl who'd begged for love in the rain was gone. Someone else sat in this hospital bed now. Someone with power, resources, and a very clear memory of every single moment of cruelty. I looked at Mr. Harrison, my voice steady for the first time in years. Tell me everything about their business. Every debt, every weakness, every connection. I wasn't their victim anymore. I was their reckoning. The next 2 months changed me completely. I threw myself into learning everything about my grandmother's empire. Business strategy, corporate operations, negotiation tactics, power dynamics. I studied 12 hours a day while my daughter Luna slept peacefully in the nursery, cared for by the best nannies money could buy. I bought tailored suits in charcoal and cream, learned how to walk into boardrooms and command them, practiced my grandmother's signature move, the cold, calculated stare that made executives squirm. But I wasn't just learning. I was investigating. My team of lawyers and private investigators uncovered everything. Anthony's affair with the woman from that night. Her name was Serena Mitchell. They'd been together for 8 months, since before I'd even gotten pregnant. The investigators dug deeper into Serena's background. Her real name was Candy Thompson. She had a criminal record spanning 3 states: fraud, identity theft, forgery. She wasn't even wealthy. She was a con artist who'd targeted Anthony for his money. The pregnancy she claimed? Completely fake. Falsified ultrasound images purchased online. I almost laughed when I read that report. Almost. Then I made my move. I had my team quietly purchase every remaining dollar of Marino debt on the open market, another $70 million worth. Now I owned all $140 million. Their entire financial survival belonged to me. But I wasn't done. Release the footage, I told my head of security. Ma'am, he asked, confused. The security cameras outside the Marino mansion. They're city property, publicly accessible. I want that footage of them throwing me into the storm released to every major news outlet. Anonymously. Within 48 hours, the video went viral. Millions of views. National outrage. A pregnant woman thrown into a storm by her wealthy in-laws. The Marino name became synonymous with cruelty. Catherine's boutique business tanked overnight. Marcus lost his influencer sponsors. Anthony became a trending topic for all the wrong reasons. And they had no idea I was behind any of it. They had no idea their mysterious creditor, the one now demanding immediate payment, was the woman they'd thrown away. But they were about to find out. The call came on a Friday morning. Mr. Marino, my assistant said smoothly, the CEO of Harrington Global will see you now regarding your debt restructuring request. I watched them through the one-way glass as they entered the building. Catherine looked older, her designer clothes unable to hide the stress. Richard's face was gray, haunted. Marcus kept checking his phone nervously. And Anthony, my former husband, looked broken, desperate, clinging to hope that this mysterious investor would save them. They thought they were meeting their savior. They had no idea. I sat in the CEO chair, facing away from the door, watching the city sprawl beneath me. I heard them enter, their footsteps hesitant on the marble floor. "Thank you for seeing us," Richard began, his voice shaking. "We're prepared to offer." I turned the chair around. The silence was absolute. Anthony's face went white. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Catherine grabbed the conference table for balance, her legs nearly giving out. Richard actually staggered backward. Marcus dropped his phone. "Hello," I said softly, my hands folded calmly on the desk. "Did you miss me?" This isn't possible," Catherine whispered. I pressed a button. The wall-sized screen behind me lit up with footage, them shoving me into the storm, me collapsing on the pavement, Anthony's final words echoing through the speakers. "That baby is not my responsibility." "Let me tell you what's possible," I said, my voice cold as ice. "I own every dollar of your $140 million debt. All of it. And as of this morning, it's due immediately." "Regina, please," Anthony started. "It's Chairwoman Davis," I corrected. "And I'm not finished." I slid folders across the table. "Your mansion seized. Your businesses liquidated. Your assets frozen. Anthony, you'll be signing away all parental rights to my daughter." "Oh, and Serena?" I pressed another button. The conference room doors opened. Police officers walked in. "She's being arrested for fraud as we speak." Catherine collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Richard's face was pure devastation. Marcus just stared at me in horror. Anthony fell to his knees. "Please, Regina. Please." I stood, walking past him without a glance. "You're not my husband anymore," I said, echoing his words. "And your problems are not my responsibility." The door closed behind me with a satisfying click. Justice was served. Within 3 weeks, the Marino Empire ceased to exist. Their mansion was seized and auctioned off. I bought it myself, then donated it to a women's shelter for abuse survivors. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Their company declared bankruptcy. Every asset liquidated. Every employee let go. The Marino name, once whispered with respect in business circles, became a cautionary tale. Catherine's boutiques closed permanently. Marcus lost everything and moved back in with his parents, who no longer had a home. Richard took a job as a consultant, barely making enough to cover their apartment rent. And Anthony? My investigators sent me photos. He was working at a car wash, living in a studio apartment, his fancy suits replaced with a stained uniform. The viral footage had made him unemployable in any respectable field. Serena was sentenced to 5 years for fraud. Meanwhile, I stood in my penthouse nursery, bathed in golden afternoon light. Luna slept peacefully in her crib, 6 months old now, healthy and beautiful. I decorated the room myself, soft creams and gentle blues, nothing like the cold marble of the Marino mansion. I placed my hand on the crib, watching my daughter's tiny chest rise and fall. "You'll never know cruelty," I whispered to her. "Only love, only strength, only the truth of who you are." Outside, the city stretched endlessly before us. My city now, my empire. I thought about that night in the storm. The girl who'd begged for acceptance, who'd crawled through the rain bleeding and broken, who'd believed she was nothing. That girl was gone. In her place stood Chairwoman Regina Harrington Davis, worth over $1 billion, controlling an empire that spanned continents, feared and respected in equal measure. I smiled, watching Luna sleep. "They thought throwing me out would break me," I said softly. "Instead, it awakened the empire they should have feared. And I would never bow to anyone ever again."